increase, the role of human-to-human connection, the role of localized production or local manufacturing ecosystems, handwork, connection between artisans and other parts of society, and kind of weaving this local fabric of communities, creating local knowledge. All of it is part of that future regenerative economy, the new paradigm that we will see gradually transiting into the 21st century. So we should not only think about the 2030 goals, we should see this as a big transition that is going to continue to happen. But if that transition is, let's say, our pathway that we need to take in order to cope with massive challenges that our society is facing, then education is actually the bridge. So we sometimes say that skills and mindsets are the bridge to the future. Because otherwise, if the major population is not prepared to work in this new reality, then everything else collapses. We don't have people who can take responsibility. We don't have people who can take these jobs. So how can we organize education? And that's the question of reorganizing the whole paradigm, not seeing, first of all, education as an isolated part of the society, something that is mostly run by governments. It's actually let's say, the layer of society that sort of intertwines with everything else in our social reality. So we need to start speaking about learning ecosystem, the idea that every activity can potentially become a learning activity, and the learning happens throughout the lifetime. And the idea is that it's not only lifelong, it's also life-wide. It has to encompass every aspect of human activity, the whole human being. So how do we organize that? It's part of the question of paradigm shift. So we need to kind of break away from this siloed approach of education as being isolated part of society into interconnect. This is where digital transformation is actually so essential, because that actually forms the connection tissue. And aspects such as assessment of skills, provision of opportunities to learners, collaboration, weaving as a practice, with not only the practice that humans do with their hands, the artisan practice, but also weaving the social fabrics, connecting together separate parts of like learning communities, bringing them together to provide for every group of learners something that can help them cultivate different types of skills. And then the second question is what kind of skills and what kind of learning we need to cultivate. So of course, part of it is to do with special technical skills or professional skills, but that's, again, a narrow part of education. And what we need to focus on, in fact, is more the aspect of creativity and imagination, the human-to-human relationship. How do we, what some of my colleagues call human better? How do we express ourselves as human, connecting with, empathizing with each other, sensing each other, so cultivating emotional intelligence? And how do we create collectives and communities? So human to collective skills, so to say, are also really essential in making it happen. And of course, you mentioned entrepreneurship, and more broadly, proactive behavior, leadership, everything that helps us not just be taking, let's say, the reality that comes to us, but being proactive, making those opportunities available to us and other members of our community. So all of it can be provided if we weave the tapestry of learning experiences. So we need to shift from content-based education to experience-based education, where people learn with hands, with heart, as well as with their minds. So this is all aspects of the paradigm shift. Of course, we can go into specific details and case studies and can mention some of it, maybe in the second round of a conversation. But I feel that paradigm shift is what we need to hold. And last thing I want to say is that, again, we should not see education as something separate. We should see it as a partner, as a bridge builder, in connection with NGOs, in connection with social movements, for cultivation of learning communities, for positive change, for sustainable future. So that's the role of education in my mind.
Very well, Pavel. Thank you very much. Welcome, Romina. To move on, I would like Pedro to address a question so that you can present yourself and take what Pavel was saying. In the report, Educational Ecosystems for Societal Transformation by Pavel's organization, it talks about and I quote, a growing network of teacher innovators who are moving from the front of the room delivering prepackaged content to the middle of the room, learning with and from students. Taking into consideration your role as a school director, have you come across this kind of teachers? And if so, how do you manage to support them? And do you see an impact of that collaborative innovation on the social ecosystem around school? Just to bring what Pablo was talking about to a very grassroots situation of someone who is working with teachers and students. And well, I would like to hear about that, Pedro. And please present yourself for the rest of the speakers.
Okay, thank you, Felipe, for the question, and thank you, Pavel and Nicolás, for sharing this lab, and thank you for Hecho por Nosotros for organizing this event, which is very, very interesting and certainly enlightening. And in order to answer the question, and first I would like to agree with Pavel in what he just said, that we are living in kind of we are shifting the paradigm in education, and I agree with that. And I would say that part of that new paradigm is basically that we are moving from a paradigm of utility, which I mean, for the last years, I have heard a lot of times the question or that we as teachers or we as a school, we should be able to help our students to understand why it was important to learn something. Yes, in terms of utility. For this it is important to learn how to write an essay, because you will need that information later on when you want to succeed in university, for instance. So you will have to learn this because I don't know, coding, for instance. Okay, you will have to learn how to code because it is going to be the language of the future. And I think that with the eruption of ChatGPT and all the generative AI tools, has kind of accelerate the discussion. So rethinking which is the aim of education. And I really think that the aim of education education has much more to do with the process than with the outcome. That is something that I think Ivan Petrelas mentioned during the third dialogue. And I agree with that. And I think, and I agree with Pavel as well, that education is not much nowadays connected with content, but with experience of learning, with happens inside the mind and the heart of our students. And so I think we are shifting from one paradigm to another paradigm. And in order to answer your question, Felipe, which was whether I have experienced this new education paradigm in terms of teachings, if the teachers have moved from the front of the class to the middle of the class. And I may say we are shifting the paradigm. Yes, and of course I have some like particular experiences or some cases in which I have experienced that, and it's very, very enriching to be able to see that. But of course, it's not the norm yet. It's not that the whole school or the school ecosystem is working in that way. But I think it's understandable, consider that we are in the middle of the river. Yes, we have to cross the river and to be able to fully understand the new paradigm and to be able to let us ask these questions to ourselves, you know, and we as a school, and I think that lots of schools are working with their teachers in this same direction, that we have to allow the teachers to ask themselves the question, what are the aims of education? Why are we doing this? What is it that we're looking for? And I think that, again, the answer is education. I think that the main objective is to help students to be more human, you know, to not just to learn things and to be worried about the quality of the outcomes they produce, but rather to become more human. I was listening to one of Simon Sinek. This is leadership coach and speaker, and he was saying it's not that easy to be a human being. I mean, it's easy for a cat to be a cat, but it's not easy for a human to be a human. And so I think that the huge challenge we have in education, and in particular in schools, is how do we help students to learn to be humans in all the deep and the wide that word implies. You know, it's not easy. And of course, this, when we are talking about human, we are talking about connecting with others, and I mean connecting with other students, connecting with other school members, but also connecting with organizations and people beyond the boundaries of the school. And I think, and I agree again with Pavel when he said that education should be conceived as something that is not isolated in the school, but rather that's something that kind of transversally crossed the society. And I think that working at a school, we have the responsibility to kind of generate the ground for that seed to be able to grow, you know. And I think it's a very, very interesting challenge, the one we are facing, and a huge opportunity for
Thank
education.
you, Pedro. Of course.
You're welcome.
And yes, I would like to add one more thing, thinking about teachers. We are talking about turning to this new paradigm, which is a learning-centered paradigm. And we have to assume that we teachers are too learners all through our lives. And that is not explicitly said and shared within the students. That's part of walking from the front of the class to the middle of the class. We are lifelong learners. And in that sense, I would like to address Nicolas, who represents a different kind of organization linked with education, but with a total different scenario. I would like to ask Nicolas, in order that he introduces himself, how does Residuca, as a grassroots organization working with students from vulnerable neighborhoods, manages to balance the great disadvantages those students have and help them turn into true entrepreneurs and change makers? Nicolas, please.
Well, thank you, Felipe, and thank you, Pedro and Pavel, to share all this event. Well, I was listening to you. I think that it is very interesting to shift a new model. I agree absolutely with that. But I will also, I think that we have to discuss also that this model has to be for all. No, we all have to need to have the opportunities. The opportunities must be for all the young the people. So this new model that we have to discuss it, and I agree, it has to be for all. And I think that education must balance opportunities. And that's why, as Pedro said, and Pavel also, education must not be isolated. We have to integrate it. And to Felipe's question, my short answer for that question will be giving opportunities to young people. But let me tell you a bit more how we think in Residuca Foundation, how to make or how to give more opportunities for young people. At Residuca Foundation, we, as you know, we accompany young people that are in vulnerable situations to finish their secondary studies, expand their job opportunities, and promote environment care. Residuca is based on the idea that an inclusive society is also a sustainable society. for this reason, and since Residuca was founded, we promote sustainable development with all the community, all the people, and especially with young people. And we work in three principal or main aspects, no? Education, employment, and sustainability. In education, we accompany young people in a personal way to finish their secondary studies. The personal accompaniment of a tutor is real very important for the student for finishing school. We also have a different partnership with school, and we give all the students a scholarship. We also work in employment. We promote job opportunities for young, and we also give a training program. And sustainability, the third aspect, we seek to awaken in young people in the community the commitment to environment. We work very hard in these three fundamental aspects. Why we do all this work, or why we think in Residuca, we are convinced of the potential that the young people have to develop their skills, ability, and knowledge necessary to start their life and carry out their project in a responsible and sustainable manner. We work with each young person so that they can be the protagonist of their life and master of their future. And I would like to finish this part to share you about Karen. Karen lives in a low-income neighborhood in a slum in Buenos Aires, and she participates in our education program and managed to graduate from school last year with a lot of effort. She was the first one to finish school in her family. And this year, she joined Brower, an animal health company, as a junior sales administrator through our employment program. And I would like to share with you what Karen told the tutor when she found out that she got the job. Thank you very much, she said, for always being there asking me how I am. I am very grateful for this opportunity. Actually, it is also thanks to you and your beautiful work, which helped me a lot. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Nicolas. That's very inspiring. And I was thinking it would be great that in order to achieve this paradigm shift, we could make of the classrooms in every school and every university a place where we can talk about our purpose, human dignity, what is to be human. I was thinking about Maria Montessori's words about cosmic education. She was talking about this approach to education, a cosmic education back in the 1940s. And we are still dealing with this content-based education. But what she was saying was, let's seek for the universe, for the great questions about how the universe works and how we stand in this world and what is our goal. So we can think about how we dress, what we eat, what we do, what we produce, and the way we do it. And that's education, that's learning, that's what we should be doing side by side, teachers and students in schools, and opening the boundaries of traditional school, which seems to be stuck in this knowledge-based and content-based education. So I'm very glad to have these inputs, and we should definitely bring to the conversation the situation of these students in vulnerable areas, because during COVID pandemic, I was working in one of those schools, and the communication breakdown was absolute because there was not connectivity. So it's a huge difference. It's another world. I simply had to go to school to give away food. I couldn't communicate with students because whether maybe they had a phone, but they didn't have the money or the resources to connect. So I think if we put together this informality with technology and a paradigm shift, we can make of those vulnerable kids really entrepreneurs that are change makers within their neighborhoods and abroad. Now I would like to open the dialogue. Pavel, I see your hand raised, please.
I also see the hand of Romina. Maybe she can go first.
Yes, Romina, sorry, you haven't talked yet. Please.
Thank you. Such a gentleman, Pavel. Thank you. Hello, I'm Romina. I'm working in Hecho for Nosotros also, like Felipe, but the other thing is I love also education. So thank you so much for the educators. Thank you, Pavel, for your words. And I want to just a little reflection, no just a question. Is about, because I'm from Argentina also, and I know both schools and both neighborhood and the school and the other way. And my thing is empathy. Is lack of empathy is moving the things, is moving the education also. When we're talking about leadership empowerment and the kind of, the other thing is what connect is the word is empathy. And this is the kind of things I think they are going around. And the thing is how you Pedro and Nicolas, yeah,
yes.
How you can manage the empathy and the leadership in the same way, because for me it's quite important to have the kids the power to say, okay, I could do something because I have the empathy, I know myself, I know how is the demand, could I offer that? How they could give to them? It's such a different point of, because I know it and I know La Cava, and for both they're opposite, but in the middle of the connect is empathy for both sides. So that is my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Romina. And maybe we leave Pedro and Nicolas thinking about it, and we give the word to Pavel, who had raised his hand. Maybe he has something to add to this.
Yeah. Thank you, Felipe. Thank you, Romina. Actually, I wanted to mention something about empathy-based education, because I really think it is essential, but I wanted to approach it from a broader perspective. Felipe, you brought this idea of cosmic education, and I think right now what we need, first of all, is planet-centered education, or planetary the education that cultivates planetary consciousness. And part of my work is going with the Learning Planet Institute in Paris. And the founder of the Institute, Francois Tadei, offered this idea of planetizens instead of citizens. So citizens is like an old concept which is actually exclusive. So it's supposed that some people are part of the city or the nation and some are excluded from it. But in fact, if we think about all of us being inhabitants of the planet, and not only us, but also other species, we are all part of what we can call planetizenship. So approaching from that perspective, recognizing that we are all planetizens and recognizing that we need to cultivate this identity, but it's more than an identity. It's actually how do we make this identity into a way of being, into a way of acting. That is, I think, the shift that we need to start cultivating in our schools, in our families, in our universities, and what it means in practical terms. Because currently, when it comes to the idea of educating for sustainable futures, it's usually very mental. It's usually about giving people more facts about the fact that planet is being destroyed, some figures, some approaches, technologies. So it's very mind-oriented. Whereas we need to start thinking about holistic aspects of it that also include the aspect of feeling. So that's where empathy becomes so important. How do we empathize with other beings, our fellow humans, but also other beings on this planet, and how recognizing how our current practices damage life on planet? How can we learn to manifest in form of being the ways of living that are regenerative? How do we cultivate the regenerative aspect of our relationship with society, with other species, with the whole world? That is what we need to learn in schools, and that is what we need to learn in communities. Therefore, part of the story is that how can we turn our schools and our colleges and universities into labs where these aspects can be prototyped? Can start with very small, let's say, simple sideways or sidelines activities that are doing in complementary time, but gradually grow into labs that will take more and more of normal curriculum time, but because that's where it actually benefits the learners of the future. The question is what actually benefits them. It's not a lot of the knowledge that is technical is, or the knowledge about that is comes from 19th century curriculum is not relevant anymore. But what is relevant is actually cultivating our ability to empathize, our ability to relate with one another, our ability to collaborate, to invent, to co-create. This should become the central process in our learning. And that should be also, we can think in every aspect of curriculum, how do we rebuild the curriculum around co-creative activities, challenge-based activities, project-oriented, play-oriented activities that are actually modeling that future. So that's what I think we need to start doing, and there's a lot of creativity that can happen. If we just open the box, we will see we need to reinvent the whole education, and that's actually happening right now. There's a lot of people that are doing this. So connecting with one another, and maybe just to finish, I feel like even in this small group, we can start thinking how we can collaborate with one each other to amplify this potential of modeling aspect of the future for regenerative, planetary, focused, let's say, thriving reality.
Thank you, Pavel. I know you maybe have to leave, and you just tell me, and it's okay with it. And thank you very much for your patience, the three of you. Nicolás, Pedro, would you like to say something else?
I would like to only to mention that, I mean, in order to answer to Romina's question, and thank you, Romina, for the question, that of course empathy is one of those human skills that I think education should absolutely address and urgently address. And I think that the starting point in order to do that is to get aware of that. I mean, to formulate it in some way that it becomes an objective, you know, an aim. So we have to make it conscious. We really want to help our students, and we really want to teach them how to relate with others. And of course, in order to relate with others, to live with others, to take care, to look after others, you really need to work empathy. There's no other way. There's no other possibility to work. But I think that the starting point is in this new paradigm that I think it is growing in education. I think that the first thing is to, okay, if we want to, first of all, we have to question again,